Wow, stories.
Am I the idiot for telling my wife's friend she is too old and ugly after she repeatedly asked my 19-year-old son to take off his shirt? He was getting uncomfortable? My family had a small get-together at my house. One of my wife's friends is over. She is unmarried. I think she is 45, 47. We aren't too close to her since she lives pretty far away. She was over our house and she started complimenting my son. My son is 19. It starts off innocent, but as time goes on, it gets more and more crossing the line. When we were out on my deck, she started telling my son to take his shirt off. What's the point of going to the gym if no one will see it? My son is visibly uncomfortable and tries to shut her down. She repeatedly is asking and is getting more aggressive with it. I interject and I am like, "Hey, Kathy, I think you are a bit too old and ugly for my son." This got her upset really quickly, and she excuses herself to the bathroom and starts crying. My wife goes to comfort her, and then later she leaves. At the end of it, my wife is super angry with me for saying that I should have said, "Hey, Kathy, looks like you had too much to drink," or something else. I told my wife that Kathy, BTW, this is not her real name, works a corporate job. She has had training on this and that she knows better. And our son was uncomfortable. He is 18 plus, but he doesn't know how to deal with an adult, let alone someone saying that in our house. I told my wife flat out that if I was to invite a guy friend and he was to ask to see our daughter in a bikini, my wife would have called the police. She says it's different. I tell her that I was way kinder to Kathy than I would have been had a guy said something like that to our daughter. And I told my wife that Kathy needs to apologize to my son before she can ever come into our house again. Overall, I think I was fair. If Kathy just said it once and I said that, I think I would be the idiot, but the fact she kept repeating it, that's why I said it. And I wanted her to get the message that yes, I am upset, that's why I included the ugly part, not the idiot. It would probably have been better to say sternly, "Kathy, that's enough. Stop it or leave my house," and leave her appearance out of it. However, your comments were in the context of her sexually harassing your barely legal child who is less than half her age, and I'm having a hard time sustaining any outrage because you were a little snarky, slapping down her exploitative and inappropriate behavior. Your wife is wrong. It is not better because she is a woman and your son is a man. Everyone sucks here. I don't think that saying, "Hey, Kathy, you're old and ugly, LOL," is the best way to do this. What would you have said if she was 30 years old and beautiful? A better way of handling it would be to say something like, "Kathy, your behavior is crossing a line and needs to stop immediately. If you don't stop, then you will need to leave." A firm statement like that will get the point across just as well, without hurting anyone, and shows your son how to handle conflict like an adult. Am I the idiot for asking my fiancé to pay a bride price? Throw away for obvious reasons. I am not asking your opinion on bride prices. I am asking if I was wrong for doing what I did. My fiancé, male 32, is a white European man. I, female 31, am a black African woman. We've been dating for 7 years. I came to his country to study and have lived and worked here since. Ever since we started dating, he took such an interest in my culture. Asked me to teach him my language, culture, and we've even been to visit a few times. He asked me to marry him last year, and I accepted. Were planning our wedding. I mentioned we'd need to account for my family back home. We could have the traditional wedding in my home country, and the white wedding in his, since we don't want to ask anyone to fly and get visas, etc. The issue came when I mentioned a bride price needing to be paid, something he scoffed at. To call it a bride price is misleading because there is so much more to it than the money that changes hands. It's our time-honored tradition that blends two families into one, and it's always something I wanted to do when you got married. I mentioned he knew of marriage customs in my country and that they include a BP. We both work in law, human rights type of fields, so he assumed I would be against BP. I told him I'm against it being a forced and money-making thing, but I'm asking that he does it because I choose it, and I want to honor my parents and culture. He refused, saying it was backwards and extortionate, and it would be like he bought me. I assured him that wasn't the case. My parents would charge a tokenistic, symbolic amount, nothing crazy, just to symbolize us getting together. I said if my parents were to sell me, He couldn't afford me. This set him off in a rage because I somehow insulted him by saying that, when what I meant is my parents aren't looking to make money off me. But this is something my people have done for millennia, and I don't want to break from tradition. I have said IDK if I'm willing to go ahead with marrying him, if he isn't willing to make the trip to my country and talk to my parents about the lobola process. He says I'm forcing/manipulating him. I am not. He knew from day one who I was and where I came from. This is what my people do, and I feel for him to label it backwards as Eurocentric, because he is viewing it from his lens, despite me having explained what it's actually about. Tuldar. My white boyfriend won't honor my culture in our marriage, and IDK if I want to marry him if he's unwilling. Am I the idiot? ETA. There's a lot of misconception and ignorance in the comments. I shall try to clarify. 1. BF and I didn't talk about BP in our specific context. However, he knew from real life and fictional context the marriage customs of my people. I assumed that he, knowing what he knows, would have known the steps necessary for marrying me. Perhaps I was wrong to assume that. This lobola is no affront to him or his upbringing outside of what I view to be a judgment of moral superiority. 2. A lot of your comments are ignorant with thinly veiled racial undertones. I knew coming to a platform with predominantly white users, this was a risk. I ask that you read what you're saying before you post, and ask yourself if you're coming from a position of superiority colored by your beliefs of Africa and Africans. Step outside your worldview. 3. Frankly, my parents are wealthy. They neither need nor plan to get rich off my marriage. They have a demonstrated pattern of behavior that assures me they are reasonable and fair when it comes to this kind of thing. 4. The money is a minuscule, literally like 5%, part of the traditional marriage, but it is a part of it. The other 95% is not monetary and is a beautiful ceremony that blends two families together. My concern is that if he's willing to shun the 95% for the sake of the 5%, what does my future W this man look like? 5. Culturally, if we do not go through these customs, I am not married and my marriage won't be recognized. The ceremony is a cultural must-have, the wedding ceremony a nice-to-have. My family means a lot and my parents have done a lot for me. I disrespect my parents over something that I not only think is a non-issue, but something I agree with. You seem to miss the part where I am willingly consenting to this. Final edit. Logging off. Lobola is something I am unable and unwilling to scrap. I'll talk to him, and we shall decide on the future of this relationship. If it's something he is unwilling to partake in, I guess we'll have our answer. Thanks to those of you who were useful in your advice and respectful in your disagreements. Bye. You're the idiot. It sounds like you don't really care for this tradition, but want him to do it because it's a family tradition. Just because he knew who you were and took an interest in your culture does not mean he has to abide by every custom associated with your culture. I don't think you should get married if you're having second thoughts just because he doesn't want to pay a bride price. Tradition or not, that should have been brought up right after you were engaged, or even better beforehand. You dated 7 years and never talked about that with him at any point? No idiots here. You want to honor your long-standing tradition, that's fine. His long-standing traditions do not include buying the bride. You don't feel that way, but it definitely comes across that way. Neither of you should force the other to go against your own values, so either you find a compromise or you go your separate ways. In the end, whichever of you is forced to capitulate will resent the other. I'm really surprised this never came up in 7 years of dating. Had you at least discussed it as a couple before the engagement, neither of you would be so shocked by the other's view.